One, welcome back to another episode of Strice Talking Points. Today I'm going to do my final take on the shooting we had in Memphis by the U.S. Marshals in the community of Frayser. And before I start, I'd just like to say please like, share, comment, subscribe to the video for more stuff. Also, feel free to dislike the video. I'm really trying to get other people's opinions. I do try and read my comments as best I can and respond. And this video is actually in response to one of those comments overall about the several of them actually about the way we see and view violence, especially when it comes from police, and how that sort of translates via the communities involved. So today, the report is Frayser community leaders weigh in after chaos erupts following deadly shootings by U.S. Marshal. Of course, if you've been following the story at all, you know that U.S. Marshals tried to arrest a man, backed up by Memphis police. He was being served warrants for car theft and shooting another person 5 times in a community that was roughly 50 minutes away. And that person, I believe, is in critical but stable condition. All right. Authorities, here we go. While things are much calmer in Frayser Thursday, emotions were still raw as tensions remained high. What we saw last night was an aberration. It is not indicative of who we are, Pastor DeAndre Brown, a Frayser community leader, said. Another one, Stephanie Love, one of the, I believe she's on the school board and also a fairly prominent member of the community. We saw anger, we saw frustration, we saw confusion, Stephanie Love added. Nerves remained rattled Thursday, one day after the deadly U.S. Marshal involved shooting, of Weber. I'm tired of seeing our black boys killed in these streets, Love said. Once word got out, chaos ensued in a pockets of Frayser. Memphis police were called in for traffic control. Angry people filled the neighborhood, with some people in the streets throwing rocks and concrete at officers and cars. Even with officers in riot gear, 36 were hurt. Now, here's kind of the thing that I want to make very clear, and that's why I'm mostly reading this here. We cannot tolerate violence against our officers, Mayor Jim Strickland said. Generally, when you see police being attacked, that's when they open fire. That's when they push back. That's when they go through. Everyone has to kind of remember that most police are just doing their jobs. Yes, there are some bad police out there, and there's another story out of, I believe, California where you kind of get a pedophile out there. But anyway, not relevant to this topic. They were having rocks and bricks thrown at them. They did not retaliate at all, Mayor Strickland said. Now, other than, I believe the only thing they really did was at the end they kind of fired off tear gas. However, it was raining, and if you don't know, water stops tear gas. I've seen that in the Chinese protests where everybody's carrying around water to pour out onto the tear gas canisters. Now, here's another story from News Channel 3, Memphis. Memphis homicides are up 48% over the same period last year. According to Memphis PD, 43 people have been killed this year compared to 29 at this time last year. It's concerning. We've had a very busy month, said Colonel Kurt Phillips of Memphis Police Department. So month to date, we're at 5 compared to this time last year. So it's on an upward tick. The department says of the cases they've solved, 78% knew the suspect. As for what caused the problem, Phillips said it's tough to say. There are more guns on the streets and more guns being stolen out of vehicles, he said. There's a culture of violence that needs to be addressed in the home. Here is actually the map. If you're listening to this, which I listen to a lot of YouTube while driving, I'm not really watching the video. I just want to hear the prisoner talk. Here's the breakdown of how Memphis gun crime homicide is happening. You'll see it not on any of the edges, on Olive Branch, Walls, Collierville, barely onto the edge of Germantown, none at Lakeland, Arlington. It's all centered around the city center. And I went through a bunch of these just looking. It is a good spread of these violent crimes, and and when you read it, generally when you go and try and figure out the case, there's just an argument. And as far as the police involved shootings, I actually pulled up the 2019 Tennessee Bureau of Investigations on this, and specifically just took Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee Police Department, and of course U.S. Marshal Service. Pulled them all in together and just looked at what happened and who was shot. We're going to scroll down past some of the names. This, of course, is of the most recent one. Request of the 30th District Attorney General Amy Weinrich, TB agents investigating circumstances surrounding an officer-involved shooting that occurred in Frayser County, Memphis, Wednesday, Tennessee. This is the most recent one that we're all kind of going over right now, where marshals are saying he rammed the car into them, got out of the vehicle with a gun, possibly the gun he used to shoot the other person, possibly not a gun, until, like I said, until this comes out fully, I don't know. However, I do believe that, as you'll see from most of these, if you actually look at the list, it's 2/3. It's if you do go against the police, if there is some kind of involvement or action, you're gonna get shot. It's a very dangerous thing to go after the police in all circumstances, because they are heightened, they are on edge, and if they see a gun, think they see a gun, someone jumps, someone does anything, there's a firing, a shooting. Here's one also in the area. This is from February 8th. This was an officer involved shooting at request of, I'm going to skip that part. Preliminary information indicates the incident occurred at approximately 3:35 in the parking lot of 6100 block Shelby Oaks Drive. Reportedly, deputies from the Shelby County Sheriff's Office Narcotics Unit were attempting to serve an outstanding arrest warrant on a male suspect. When the suspect saw the deputies approaching in the parking lot, he reportedly fired upon them. At least 2 deputies returned fire, striking the man who died at the scene. No law enforcement sustained injury at the incident. And our third one here happened very first of the year, January 3rd. Preliminary information indicates that shortly after 8 p.m., officers with the Memphis Police Department responded to a call of a domestic disturbance at the residence of, I'm not going to give the residence. As reporters responded to the scene, a male ran towards them with a knife. The initial investigation indicates 3 officers fired, striking the suspect. Suspect deceased at the scene. No police officers were injured. Now, real quick, we're just going to flip through. Of the 3 officer-involved shootings, you have 2 black men, 1 white man. In all instances, the family says they don't believe their family member would do this. And I believe that's kind of the standard rate you see overall. Now, here's the final part of this, which is kind of the part that really does kind of upset me the most, make me worry the most. Black Tennesseans were killed 5.5 times more often than all homicide victims in the U.S. When the state and national rates per capita residents were compared in a new study from the nonprofit Violence Privacy Center, the Tennessee's rate of black homicide in 2016 was nearly 40% higher than the rate of ranked 8th among states. Now you can see in 2018 for Nashville there were 84, 111. Now, disproportionate number of black homicide victims. I do think this kind of ties back into the overall violent crime rate. For those of you who don't know, blacks, African Americans, whatever you'd like to refer, make up less than 13% of all of the population in the U.S. However, they account for half of all homicides. And at the same rate, they roughly account for half of all homicide victims. That is a very troubling statistic, troubling fact to think about. And that is where you really need to focus on this. In addition to strengthening our current gun laws, we must prioritize investing in community-based prevention programs. It is imperative that policymakers at the local and state level take meaningful action to commit and support community leaders working to address this issue. Final part. This is the kicker to me on all of this. VPC's study also analyzed the circumstances around the fatalities to analyze whether these homicides were committed as part of another felony, such as a fatal situation that began as an armed robbery. In 2016, however, 75% of those VPC could analyze for circumstances were not related to other felonies. Most of the standalone homicides began as arguments, the data showed. So my final take on this is that when we look at homicides, when we think about the overall danger, the danger as stated by the Memphis Police Department, guns on the street, stolen out of vehicles, he said, there's a culture of violence that needs to be addressed in the home. You're not seeing, and even though it's pushed by the media, and even though this entire story that I've done focuses around an officer-involved shooting, that is not the normal. There are, so far in Memphis, 43 shootings. Three other than those, are related to police trying to do their job, make arrests, serve warrants, such and so forth. You see it whenever there is a more aggressive stance taken by the person being served. So, the one gentleman opened fire on the police. He was shot. You see another one running at them with a knife. He was shot. You see this one where ramming your car into the police. He was shot. And most of these are referring to other outstanding warrants, or these three, two of them have other outstanding warrants that the police were there to serve, and then the escalation went up because, of course, no one wants to be arrested. And that's just my take on this. What we're experiencing, what we see, is an uptick in not an uptick in general, but you see a rise in violent crime, homicide in these regions. And it is generally predominantly people who know each other, people who've had prior contact, people who are having arguments. And then it escalates, and most of these are being done by guns on the streets, illegal firearms, things that have been stolen. And that is what needs to be addressed, and the culture, the community itself needs to take a deep, hard look at itself, because it's not the police coming after you, taking you down. There's this huge rash of shootings, and that's just gun death. Now, you'll see stabbings, vehicle homicides. These people here were actually wounded. It doesn't say if they were shot or anything like that. But you see these areas where crime is flourishing, where murder is happening, and the police are there just to try and help out, because one of the things you see about, especially, and this is going to be a slightly different turn, what you see with them discussing gun control is they're going after the people of legal gun ownership, where if you live in one of these communities, you live near one of these communities, I would highly suggest you look into legal gun ownership as a way to combat your own safety for criminal gun ownership, which is where most of these homicides come from. I went through a couple of cases, and it's generally anytime there's a shooting and there's someone found with a gun, it was illegally obtained, it was stolen, it was not purchased from a vendor. And if that's the one thing we can take from all this, is the world is crazy, and try and be safe as best you can. But I thank you all for listening. I'm sorry I didn't have any wonderful summation of this, but it's just to show that in a time like this, whenever we see this, You have police having things hurled at them. You see a massive rise in gun death and gun homicides over the course. These are all related to stolen guns, illegal guns. And then when you look at the region as a whole, you see a very limited number of police shootings, and in those you generally see aggression towards the police, towards the people trying to get them, and that leads to a shooting. And all in all, the police are trained to hit their targets, and that's why you see the rate of death. But thank you all. Sorry, this is a very sad topic. I do believe this will be the final one here, unless of course they release something specific on this. But the tensions have apparently died down over this, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Like, share, comment. Feel free to dislike the video because I'm not in charge of you. I'm just trying to have a conversation. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.